and welcome back. This week we are going to dive into the world of podcasts. Actually, I would love to come up with something more personal, like a routine, a vlog, but I'm literally filming this in between two exams, so I needed something quick because I really want to upload something. And I think I can help a lot of people with this video because I've been getting this question and that's something that I can talk about. So every once in a while we're going to have advice videos like this. So today we're going to discuss podcasts, how to use them as a listening material, how to improve your target language using them, like pronunciation, vocabulary, and quite literally everything. Let's start with why podcasts are such an important language learning tool. First of all, listening is a core language learning skill. It's a passive skill, so if you want to improve your speaking, in the background you should be working on your listening. And also listening trains your brain to recognize sounds, speech patterns, filler words, pronunciation. And also I think podcasts are a really practical approach. You can just literally listen to them in the background, or you could just take and study them as well. But most importantly, I love podcasts because it helps you a lot with your general culture. You could listen to a conversation about a random topic. What's even cooler is when you're telling a random fact and be like, I actually learned this from a French podcast. So there are two ways of listening to podcasts, or quite literally anything. You could either listen to it passively in the background while walking, while cooking, without paying a lot of attention, or you could sit down and study it like a learning material. And today we are going to talk about both of them. We will start with beginners. If you're a beginner, I know that it's kind of intimidating to listen to something in an entirely new language. Even if you don't understand them entirely, you should keep listening because podcasts are going to help you acquire the sounds of the language. So as you keep listening, you will understand how the language really sounds, you will pick up some words, and overall it will help to build the language in your brain. And if you want to make podcasts an efficient part of your language learning as a beginner learner, that's why transcripts come in. Because a lot of beginner podcasts, the podcasts that are made for language learners, come with transcripts, which is literally a text that includes everything that the speaker is saying. Sometimes you will find them with the podcast, sometimes it's going to be on another platform. When you have a transcript, you could either read it before listening to the podcast. You get familiar with the topic and know what they're talking about, and it gets easier to follow when you're listening, or you could just follow it along while you're listening, so it helps you to build some association between how the words are written in that language and how they sound. Other than that, you could also study it like a reading text after listening. You could just take it and treat it like how you would study any written text in your target language. You could highlight unknown words, mark some different grammar structures. So this could serve in a lot of different ways. Personally, as a beginner learner in Finnish, I work a lot with podcasts and with transcripts. So there's this one learner podcast that I'm following, and I always break down a transcript. I literally write down everything like this. This is the entire podcast, and I always leave a blank line here so I can make adjustments or I can write the meanings of the words. And I use different markers, as you can see. I will also put an example because I do this twice. I first write it on my laptop, then I write it on my notebook because I think English needs a lot of revision. After doing this, I basically listen to the same episode over and over again until I understand everything that's been said. And I think this is a useful method if you are a beginner who's trying to listen to something in that language, or if you're an intermediate learner who's still feeling like a beginner, like if you still don't understand things. And believe me, if you do this with like 2 or 3 episodes, because this is a huge exercise with a lot of steps, you will literally start understanding everything after you repeat this a few times, because you just have to get familiar with how people speak. And when you pick up a lot of essential words, listening to podcasts or other things is going to become much more easier. Sometimes while listening to a Finnish podcast, I find myself saying the conjugations in advance, like I can guess how the next word is going to be conjugated, not because I'm an expert of Finnish grammar, I don't spend a lot of time studying grammar, but because I listen to it a lot and my brain can just guess the patterns. I know this is not a lazy way of learning, this requires a lot of effort and time, but I generally do like 1 episode per week. But if you have more time, you could also do 2 or 3, but I would recommend that you take your time because here what counts is revision. Now we're going to talk about intermediates. Here things get more fun because now you're independent and you can actually follow a conversation, and also you can discover a lot of new topics. And also I feel like intermediate level is the most rewarding level when it comes to like listening to something and actually learning stuff out of it. It will improve your level really significantly if you actually make listening a natural part of your life. When I'm listening to an intermediate podcast, I'm not going to break down the entire transcript or study all the sentences because I think it's really time consuming. You could have a more practical approach, and especially especially if you're someone who works with several different languages, it's going to become even more impossible. So I would just listen to podcasts, not being dependent on transcripts, because at this point, I can understand how a word is written. So at this level, I wouldn't be really rigid and follow a text. I can actually show you with a Dutch podcast that I was listening to today while eating lunch. This one is about economy and history, but it doesn't have a transcript. And I actually didn't even mind it. So.
En zo werden de kapitalisten belangrijker dan leenheren of zelfs koningen. Wat heeft dit feudalisme met technologie te maken? Hiervoor moeten we iets verder in de tijd. We gaan terug naar het jaar 1945.
When I listen to this, I pretty much understand everything. And if there's a word that I haven't heard before, I probably know how it's spelled. I can just look up for it in the dictionary, and if I got something wrong, it's going to be corrected. When it comes to vocabulary, I can say I'm much more independent, but if you'd like to analyze the grammar structures, because podcasts are also a really useful way to do that. If you're learning a language with a challenging grammar, you could always go back to transcript and analyze the structures and highlight, maybe like if you're learning a certain grammar topic, you could just highlight it and also see how it's used in different contexts, how it's conjugated in different types of words. It's going to be really helpful, but when I was listening to this podcast, I didn't really need it. But let's say if I was learning something new in Dutch, like sentence order, a new tense, then I could also listen to a podcast with the sole purpose of just analyzing the grammar structure. And as an intermediate learner, it's also time to move beyond language learning podcasts, because if the only podcasts that you're listening are, is German a difficult language? 10 difficult Spanish words. I'm sorry, like no offense, but I think there are more interesting things in the world, and you can maybe listen to 2 episodes about this, but then there are a lot more to discover. And when you take a language exam one day, they're not going to talk about language learning. They're going to talk about AI, climate change, education systems. They're going to talk about every single thing that you can possibly imagine. Always add some variety. You should listen to podcasts about different topics. And some learner podcasts also have episodes about different topics, so you don't just have to go and listen to something that natives would listen to. You could still stay at your level, but add some variety. Another detail is that I think at this point you should be listening from different sources. For example, I listen to a lot of Swedish podcasts to improve my listening skills and pronunciation. Some of them are learners podcasts, some of them are native podcasts, but I only have one subscription. That podcast that I'm using to actually learn Swedish if I'm not actively studying the textbook, and all the other podcasts, I just listen to them like in the background or like in a more chill way. Especially in languages with distinct pronunciations or different dialects, I think this variety is super essential. You should expose yourself to different ways of speaking, different people. But as I said, like I have one learning podcast and a lot of different podcasts that I'm just listening to in my free times. Last but not least, if you find it difficult to follow a podcast without a transcript as an intermediate learner, first of all, I think that's normal because you're still getting used to language. But if you really want to solve this, I think your brain is possibly experiencing a connection problem between how the words look and how they sound. If you want to solve this, I would recommend that you watch a lot of YouTube videos with subtitles, like consciously following what they're saying. And also something I did a lot as a kid, I would just put on lyrics videos and I would listen to French songs all day long, but I would just stare at the lyrics. So when someone was speaking French to me, I actually had the subtitles in my brain, even if I didn't understand what they were saying. I just knew how it looked. Why I say it's really crucial to listen to podcasts in this level is because podcasts are made of scripts, and when you listen to someone speak in a structured way, you are going to acquire a lot of expressions, a lot of important things like finally, for instance. On the other hand, if you are a strong podcast listener, you are going to learn these things naturally. So it will help you to build some kind of structure while speaking, and as we said, listening is the biggest contributor of speaking. So if you want to speak in an organized way, if you want to sound smart, then working with podcasts is still so important. To finish, I want to talk about advanced learners, and if you have reached C1 or C2 level in a language, I think at this point you don't need the how to learn a language advice because you figured out everything on your own. And I'm proud of you for that. But as someone who has reached this level in 6 languages, I think I can share some insights, especially on podcasts. I think it's really personal and it depends on you and your goals, but at this point I don't really listen to podcasts to learn a language, or to learn grammar. I just listen to podcasts on a lot of different topics so I can improve my general culture and occasionally learn some interesting vocabulary. And also, as advanced learners, a lot of our interesting vocabulary is just sleeping in our brain because in daily life, no one speaks at C1 or C2. So when I listen to a podcast, sometimes I just catch a word and I'm like, wait, I know this too, and maybe I can start using it. So it just kind of reminds you of how deep the language can be. But still, like, I listen to a lot of podcasts in different languages, but when I'm doing it, I just don't think, like, for instance, when I'm listening to German news, I don't think it, like, I'm improving my German, but rather, I just want to find out what happened today. I think at some point you shift from learning a language to living a language. So at this level, when I listen to podcasts, I just don't perceive it as a language learning exercise, necessarily. Because I think for me, it's more of a personal development thing. Like when I listen to podcasts in different languages, it's a linguistic inspiration. Like sometimes I learn new words about different disciplines that I'm absolutely not familiar with. Sometimes I observe their manner of speaking. Sometimes I just listen to them to let myself to the rhythm of the language. So after that shift happens, I kind of start to listen to stuff for the content itself, like for the personal development side, not for the language side. Like, I don't care whether it's German or Spanish or Italian, I just want to learn about this topic. Finally, I know this is not the same as a podcast, but still I want to mention it for advanced learners. Sometimes you can also shift to audiobooks, especially like sometimes I just read a lot of books and I want to have something simple that I'm listening at the same time, so I listen to an audiobook, or if I just cannot find the printed version. I still think that podcasts are more of daily life and books are more of art. So I wouldn't just go and consciously study a book. So if you want to create some variety as an advanced learner, I think audiobooks can count in as well. That was all I want to share for today. Hopefully this gave you some useful insights. And if you're learning French, a few months ago I created a content library in French. Like if you're a learner or if you use the French language as a tool, you're going to find everything sorted in levels, types, style, with all descriptions. So if you're looking for some material, I'm sure it's there. If you would like to buy it, the link will be in my description and you can follow me on different social media accounts. And I will see you next weekend after my exams. Take care. Bye!